Hi, I'm Tom with a list of interesting things. Today on the list of interesting political things is something I'm extraordinarily passionate about: the statehood of Washington, D.C. Before we start, I hope you'll remember to subscribe to stay up to date on all the most interesting things. It's going to be a pretty short one, so let's dive right in, with some of the most spectacular news to come out of 2021 so far. That by a margin of 216 to 208, the House of Representatives has passed a bill to make Washington, D.C. a state in the Union. For anyone unfamiliar, Washington, D.C. is the capital of the United States. It's sandwiched on a relatively small strip of land between Maryland up here and Virginia down here, and it is not a state. That's important. It's in a category somewhat similar to Puerto Rico. There's a link on our video to that situation on the screen right now. Now, it doesn't have statehood, but it is filled to bursting with Americans who lack the sovereignty that states enjoy. For example, residents of the District of Columbia have no voting members of Congress. That's why on every D.C. license plate you'll see the phrase, "End taxation without representation." They also have fewer electoral votes than they should, because of the way that they were allocated to the district in 1961, guaranteeing that they always have the same number of votes as the smallest state, in spite of the fact that they should have more. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, the District of Columbia is under the direct control of the federal government. The city government is autonomous to a certain extent, but the federal government has the ability to override essentially any laws or ordinances in the city if it so chooses at any time and without any warning. We saw this come to a head last year when President Trump federalized the Maryland and Virginia National Guards and put down largely peaceful protests following the murder of George Floyd. This would have been considered unconstitutional if it had happened in, say, Kansas. The federal government is allowed to override state laws and practices only under very specific and very well-defined conditions, none of which were met in these protests. But since D.C. is effectively federal land, the federal government's power there is much stronger. But, effective the 22nd of April, the House of Representatives passed a bill accepting D.C.'s Constitution and admitting it into the Union as the Washington Douglass Commonwealth. I'll say that again. Not the Washington District of Columbia, but the Washington Douglass Commonwealth, named for both George Washington and Frederick Douglass. That doesn't mean they're a state, no. But it does mean that they're only one step away. Now, if it can pass the Senate, then those 700,000 Americans living in my favorite place on the planet will, after a very long time of fighting for it, finally have jurisdiction over their homes. This means so many wonderful things, including that they'll finally have congressional representation, gaining 2 congresspeople and 2 senators. After such a long time, they'll be able to decline or deny the federal government's orders if they can be argued as unconstitutional, as long as, of course, they don't take place in the federal seat of Washington, which will remain in federal hands. This will be the place with most of the National Mall and the White House and the Capitol building on it. And of course, my personal favorite, this means flag discussions. That's right, flag discussions. Who's excited for some vexillology? If they adopt D.C. as a state, then I think they have to adopt Puerto Rico pretty soon after. There's a whole lot of good reasons, not the least of which being these god-awful 51-star flags. Look at this thing. Oh yeah, look at this. This is just pie. This is just a 5-sliced pie. These are horrendous, and the 52 stars are so much better. Subscribe to find out more, and until next time, be like the fight for DC statehood. Be brave and bold and perseverant. And above all, be interesting. I'll see you next time.